Test, Test, Test. Test, 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 Test. Test, 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 Test. Test, 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 Test. Hallo. Okay. Hallo, hallo. Genau, wenn ich auf Mittelposition bin und spreche, dann hat man halt das. Wenn ich ganz rechts bin, dann hat man mich voll delayed. Und nur wenn ich ganz links bin, dann bin ich präzise. Das heißt, wenn ich spreche, muss das auf ganz links sein.
Nochmal, wenn du sprichst, musst du auf ganz.
Links. Nee, links.
Sorry, nicht.
Links.
Ja, wenn du sprichst. Und
Genau.
wenn sie spricht.
Wenn sie spricht, auf ganz rechts. Und in der Mitte muss es. In der Mitte ist es am Anfang, wenn wir das Intro spielen.
Intro ist in der Mitte, wenn sie spricht, ganz links, wenn du sprichst, ganz rechts.
Nee, das ist eigentlich genau umgekehrt. So, das ist ganz rechts und das ist ganz
Ich
links.
weiß nicht, was links und rechts ist, aber wenn du sprichst, dahin,
Ja,
wenn sie spricht, dahin.
genau.
Alles klar.
Perfekt.
Wir sehen uns morgen um 9:30. Ich habe die Schlüssel.
Amy, are you already there?
Yeah.
Hey, can you quickly turn on your video?
Hello?
Hey, great. Um, just as a test, if we can quickly test the screen sharing
Yeah.
for the framing. And did you send me some links, or are you not planning on showing those?
Yeah, I didn't get to find the one I needed.
Okay, so we just do it without it.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
if at worst case scenario, I put it in the chat.
Okay, then I can grab it and open it on my laptop. Then it will just take like 1 minute or something, but that's fine.
Okay. I
So-
don't think we'll need it. I can send it as a postscript if needed.
Amazing.
Okay, let me go for this.
I already allowed it for you.
Okay, let me see. You portion screen.
Okay.
Here.
Right. Okay. Great.
It's okay?
Yeah, it's fine, but keep it on.
Okay.
Okay. Quickly gotta do some settings. I put the microphone away for a second.
Okay.
One more second. Jacobin, wo ist das Gaffertape? Okay, we are done. Amy?
Yeah.
I mean, the easiest would be for streaming reasons if we leave the screen shared from now on.
That's fine.
So do you feel comfortable to start talking while there is already a slide of yours on?
Sure. Maybe you can just describe how many people are there.
Yeah, so far they always drop in like 10 minutes too late. So
Okay.
but I think we're already like 15 now.
Okay. And quickly, is it all disciplines?
I mean the academy features mostly painting, sculpture, and some intellectual classes
Okay.
who don't want to be tied to just one discipline.
Yeah.
And mostly it's like people from all disciplines, but with a quite an open mindset. So it's not really just painters or sculptors. Yeah, but they are coming from several classes.
Okay.
So basically,
And
yes.
is it masters or?
No, in
Oh.
Germany we have this thing called Diplom, which is a 5-year term, but you can also extend it as long as you want. You can go for 10 years if you feel like.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really special system that only exists in fine arts in Germany. So, like all other disciplines like medicine, law, and stuff, they all had this system basically, but they turned it down. So it's really just the fine arts who have that. So that's one main reason for people in Europe to go to Germany for their art studies. And it's very
That's
cheap. I
great.
mean, you pay like 350 a semester, and that's it. And you get like a ticket for the whole area to use public transportation, so it's quite attractive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm ready.
I think
Whenever you are.
yeah, I think I would say let's start with we will play the intro video, and I will quickly do a moderation. You will see me on the, because you cannot see me now because I'm sitting in front of the laptop, but I'll go in front of the camera and then you'll see me. I'll quickly
Okay.
introduce you. Should I just say, we keep it very, very short. Should I
Sure.
say Amy Franceschini, aka Future Farmers, or something like that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. And I think, yeah, we will start that at 7:05. So in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay?
Super.
Cool. Okay. See
Ciao,
you
ciao.
in a second.
Okay. Bye.
Da muss diese Linie sein, aber wenn wir nichts verändern, dann bleibt es auch gleich. Welcome everyone and good evening. This is the last Sparta talk of this year before Christmas, so we will continue with some lectures still in the same semester but in the new year, and today we are very excited to host Future Farmers, aka Amy Franceschini, and we'll give the word to you now. Enjoy. We will have a Q&A right after 15 minutes after the talk. Yeah, enjoy. Hi, Amy.
Hey.
Sorry, I guess you couldn't hear my introduction. But yeah, I didn't say
I can
say much.
imagine.
Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Okay. Hello, I'm Amy Franceschini. I'm one of several future farmers that I will introduce to you in the lecture tonight. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I really want to visit your school. I think in 1989, when I was studying art in San Francisco, one of my professors said, "Oh, you must go to Dusseldorf. You should study in Dusseldorf." And I actually went and visited your school and the school in Braunschweig. And I was too scared. The school was so serious and so much more part of the art world than my little school in San Francisco, that I ran back to San Francisco to be in my safe little forest. But now I'm here. I made a cigarette for tonight because I can't join you. I don't smoke, but I know a lot of you are smoking tonight. So I have this long cigarette here to smoke with you. I will start. So it's a bit weird not to see you all, but I'm going to imagine this room full of people. I'm going to just introduce Future Farmers. So this is an image of, we had a survey exhibition in 2018 of 20 years of our practice. And this was in the entry hall. Hey guy, that's nice to see you. That's nice. We tried to make a map of the people and places and projects of 20 years practice. So the reason why there are so many people involved in Future Farmers is because we ran a artisan residency program for 20 years, from 1994 until we still run it, but our practice, as you see, we travel so much that it's hard to host residents. But because we had this residency program, we really made relationships with different artists that continued to be collaborators over the years. So now we are this kind of loose network of people from many parts of the world, mostly Western Europe. And so I'll introduce some projects and how we form constellations based on invitations to work, but maybe just a little bit of personal history of me since I'm speaking. I was trained as a photographer in art school, and the art school I went to was very poor. We had no resources. So the first art class I took, they only had 2 people had to share a camera. And I found this image. This was not our camera, but it sort of this image will come back into the work later. Because Future Farmers often makes tools that are too big for one person to use. And I think it comes from this early experience of having to share a camera. So in the class, we had to form teams, and we had a large format camera. And so I would go with someone to their field research and help them set up the camera and take pictures. And then they would go with me in my field and I would take pictures. And I think it really led to a desire to always be kind of collaborating and finding other perspectives to bring into a work where we have many complexities we have to deal with. So another part of Future Farmers is we are a collective, and the art world, of course, this year Documento was a celebration of collectives, but till now it's been quite a difficult way to operate in the art world, because the art world is used to the singular artist. They have singular artist fees, and when you have a collective, that's kind of hard economically to deal with. Also, the type of work we make is quite often immaterial. We do a lot of social practice. So how do you show this in an exhibition? is difficult, and sometimes you have to be stubborn. So in this exhibition that we had two students. We provided student jobs for 2 students for the whole summer to be donkeys in our exhibition, to create a live persona in this exhibition that was mostly past work. And the donkey became this figure for us, this figure of stubbornness and kind of resistance to being domesticated. So maybe you'll see the donkey come up in different forms. So this, just to show you what this image was, this was for the survey. We had 20 years of artwork in a kind of classic exhibition style, which we fought really hard to resist, but we won another room where we could do whatever we wanted in another space. But in this space, the curator wanted to show this sort of art historical look at all of our work, but we wanted some live elements. So we had the donkeys going through 20 years of video documentation, and one donkey would listen, and one donkey would listen, and one donkey would look, and then every 5 minutes they would type what they heard and what they saw. And so this was a running project. So we actually were getting our archives in order, but also having a live element to the show. So this was in San Francisco, and it was really almost like a homecoming, because we started in San Francisco, and then we've traveled quite around a lot, and we don't work in San Francisco so much. So this was like a homecoming. So now I go back a little bit, I kind of do a timeline to the first work that really pushed out of a museum context. So in 2006, we were still quite hardcore activists in San Francisco. I was doing a lot of work around anti-war activism, and also housing issues in terms of affordable housing. And I was also interested in urban agriculture as a possible way of feeding people, but also making our cities more livable. So in 2007, we were invited to the Museum of Modern Art to do an exhibition, and we asked, can we do an exhibition in the world, not in the museum? And I'll kind of condense this. In the end, we ended up planting a garden in front of our city hall to demonstrate the different types of urban agriculture that exist, but also as a call to action to the city to fund urban agriculture, and to bring all the entities already getting funding to the front of the city hall to show the different types of farming going on. And at this point, the museum was like, yeah, you can do something outside, but you must do something in the museum as well. And at first we really resisted, but then we realized that actually the museum is a space to kind of distill the mess of what goes on in social practice. So you'll see throughout our work, there's really a place that the museum exhibition space really serves our work actually quite importantly. So I'll show that. But just to give you some context, this was in 2007, and I think up until now we were like, smash the state, fuck the state, no state. And then after this project, we kind of became reformists and thought, okay, we actually represent the state and we vote for the people inside the state, and we need to have a closer relation. But how do you actually get in relation with the city? And we were quite lucky at the time. This is a picture of one of the city representatives who once a month would open his office and let artists have an exhibition. And then he would also serve free food. So tons of people came inside the city hall. This was an artist named Barry McGee. He's quite a famous graffiti artist. And he spray painted "Smash the State" inside the city hall, the state office. Which just gives an idea of, like, at this time, San Francisco is quite progressive and open. And at this point, it really was the first time I had been inside of City Hall. And it gave a lot of young people at the time this idea, like, actually, we should be inside here instead of outside protesting. Like, how do we actually get in dialogue with these people that are making decisions on how our money is spent in the city? So this was a moment where I actually met Matt Gonzalez, this representative, and I told him this idea that I had seen this picture in 1943 of a farm in front of City Hall. And this was a demonstration garden that was asking the city to put gardens in every park in the city because it was during the war and many farmers were at war, so we didn't have food production. So the United States said, we need to start growing food, everyone, everywhere. And it was this very successful 2-year project where 48% of our food in the United States was grown in parks. So like this was Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, where 140 plots were dedicated to farming. In New York, the same thing happened. And I was quite struck by how people could participate in something so quickly. Of course, it's a state of urgency. And so we were able to, through this picture, this is kind of a Future Farmers trick, to find something as historical precedent to show to politicians. Politicians are really afraid of new ideas. But if you can show them something that happened in the past, they can see it and say, why? Like the first thing they said when we showed the mayor this image is, he said, why don't we have a farm in front of City Hall now? So this image that I've actually found in the library gave us quite a lot of openness. And then in the museum, we created a suite of sculptures that were like these kind of playful invitations to thinking about urban farming. So this was a pogo stick shovel and this wheelbarrow that you could ride around the city to use and share as a tool. And these are kind of like these simple iconic images that we tried to make to relate to this kind of more messy process of urban agriculture. So in 2007, this was our mayor at the time. He also took advantage of this as a big publicity stunt to position himself to run for the governor. He's now the governor of California, the richest state in the nation. And so you find yourself operating in this strange area, a questionable area of the instrumentalization of being an artist in this realm, and we can maybe talk about that. So he took this opportunity of the opening day of our event, which thousands of people came to, because each of the circles of this garden was one neighborhood who had already some funding. So it was a way to bring together all these urban farmers and make a call to the city to take a bigger step in supporting urban agriculture. So through this, the governor or the mayor was very excited, the city was excited and took it really seriously. And we together wrote a new law that dedicates $300,000 per year to neighborhoods who apply for urban agricultural funds. And this is maybe kind of dry, but I really think that policy is also a medium. There was this existing, it was sort of this ready-made that existed. It was a document that was called Healthy San Francisco. The city was trying to think about how do we create a healthier city, and urban agriculture fit into this ready-made. So we just added a paragraph. So this is still existing today in San Francisco. And from this, an urban agricultural alliance has started, and there's one representative in the city government now that is a representative of urban farming around the whole city of San Francisco. So this project got a lot of attention. Michelle Obama put a victory garden in front of the White House in Washington. Many different cities started to adopt this. And then we were also started to be asked by different cities to do greening projects. So in 2011, we were asked by the city of Philadelphia to think of the city, to imagine the city as the greenest city in the United States by 2015. So this was 2011. And we were invited as artists to make a temporary artwork to imagine Philadelphia as the greenest city in 2015. And for us as Californian artists at this time, Philadelphia is a very strange context. It's, for us, we had never really been to post-industrial America. So if you haven't been there, it's a lot of neighborhoods are just kind of vacant, empty buildings that are sitting there. There's empty lots, open land where no one is doing anything. And a lot of it has to do with industries moving out because they had contaminated the land or they had collapsed as an industry and just kind of left, and there was no more work, so people left. And so the first thing we thought was that we proposed that we should buy several of these buildings because they were like $5,000 for a building and we had a $40,000 budget. and turned these into kind of a wind farm. The city is very windy. And so we thought we could put windmills on top of each house and illuminate the interiors to kind of illuminate this past and invite people to imagine what we could do with these abandoned architecture. And at the time, someone asked, like, why are you into windmills? And we told them the idea, but we also in Future Farmers, Don Quixote was quite a character for us, an inspiring character of this like absurd person who was like tilting the windmills and dressing up in his cardboard armor and was quite kind of crazy. And so we were telling someone this, and we hadn't identified a location yet that we would work in, and we hadn't identified the project. And someone was in our studio and said, actually, there is a Don Quixote statue in Philadelphia. And let me see, I don't know if you can see it in the slide here, but in the right, there's this man on a horse, and he's pointing to an abandoned building. And so we talked to our commissioner and we said, do you think we can get access to this building across the street from the Don Quixote monument? And we, long story short, we got access, and the owner of the building said, I want to talk to these artists. What do they want to do? And we said, yeah, we have this idea. And so our idea kind of changed. We would like to run a restaurant in your building, but we don't want to serve food. We want to do soil testing. Because in the neighborhood, a lot of the soil is contaminated from the steel industry and the smelting industry. And we want to give citizens access to getting their soil tested. And the guy said, yeah, and what's this windmill? Why do you want a windmill? And we told him the story of Don Quixote. And he said, this guy sounds like me. That's great. You can have my building. Do whatever you want. So we got the building. And for 6 weeks, it was empty. We took it, cleaned it out, and put this windmill through the whole building. And so the idea was that we would, in the bottom floor, we would run this soil kitchen, we called it. And we would serve soup while people would bring in their soil and get it tested and wait for the results. And then this windmill would illuminate the room. So the lighting for the room was coming from the movement of the windmill, which you can see here. These like little light bulbs are connected to pulleys that went all the way through the building. And so this was only a 6-day temporary project. And we partnered with a garden who had formerly had toxic soil on the land. And for 10 years, they grew food and also did mycoremediation, which is using mushrooms, a rhizomatic structure, to clean the soil. And now they have healthy soil and they're a farm. So we asked them to provide soup for us so that we could be having, actually embodying the notion of taking responsibility to clean the soils. And then workshops were in the back. It was basically an open space where neighbors could present any kind of workshop they wanted to relative to soil production or contaminated soil. And then we partnered with the government. We were lucky at the time, the American government was shut down, so people had no jobs. So we got very lucky that the Environmental Protection Agency could bring their tools in a bus to the front of the cafe. So people would come in and they would drop off a little bit of their soil. Another part of the soil would go to the bus and get tested for different levels of cadmium, lead, and arsenic, which are the 3 toxic metals in most of the soil in Philadelphia. And if the soil came back toxic, they would get a consultation with the government. If it came back non-toxic, they would have a consultation with these soil scientists to test the quality and the nutritional value and see what they could actually grow in the soil. And after 4 days, this place started to get really full. Neighbors were very curious. People were bringing soil from all over. We were doing 300 tests per day. And at the end, this group self-organized. These were all urban farmers who knew that we were commissioned by the city, by the mayor of Philadelphia. And they said, we want to make a demand to the mayor, since we have his attention, to fund urban farming and to promise that they will clean 10,000 acres by 2015. So we wrote a declaration to the mayor from this meeting. And this was all self-organized, like purely by creating this space. People heard about it and organized their own meetings. I think I'll just go forward. This was the back area. We can talk in detail next later, maybe. So then, because of this Victory Gardens project, we were also invited to Abruzzo, which is a part of Italy that's east of Rome on the Adriatic, just up in the mountains above the Adriatic. And we were invited to come and excite the imagination of young people to stay in the region and be farmers, which is again kind of absurd, like people from San Francisco coming to Italy to tell people to stay there. So we kind of resisted the invitation for several years because we thought, like, how do you work in that context? We don't speak the language. And then the person who invited us finally convinced us to come. And we, in the end, we ended up creating this project called This Is Not a Trojan Horse. And it was this horse that was human powered, that you could roll around and then stop. But the region was very hilly, so we also had to take it on a tractor to different villages and then roll it out into the village. And the reason we chose this, I'll just go forward a little bit. The reason we chose the horse as a form is because in the first 2 weeks when we were just driving around and getting to know the region and talking to people, we asked, like, what's the future of farming here? And they were like, there's no future of farming. And we said, do you have any images of the past of farming? And they said, oh, yes, there's this, just 10 years ago, there were wild horses here, and everybody was harvesting together. And recently Ryanair was put in Pescara, the major city, and people are from England coming to build their second houses, and they put fences up and they don't want horses. And the only future here is tourism. And so we kept hearing this horrible story, but the horse was something everybody told us about. So we tried to create this common imaginary. So we created this horse, and we would go to the edge of a village, and then we would roll the horse in, and then we would just see what happened. And the horse was so loud when it would roll that immediately people would open their windows, kids would come, they would start walking in it, and the whole village would gather around us. In the inside, we had this blackboard, and we would just ask people to write, what's your image of the future of farming? And something we didn't imagine was that one village would write on one side, and then we would go to another village, and the other village would say, like, Loreto said that, we're going to say this. So it provoked this competition, and everybody said, nobody talked about farming. The horse has given us a reason to talk. And people started to follow us from village to village. Sometimes people would just look at us the whole time. This was the oldest woman in one of the villages who sat for really 3 hours watching. And then she ran away, and she came back with her brother, who was a beekeeper. He actually was blind, and he wanted to tell us about the challenges of beekeeping due to climate change and just the changing desires of people in this region. We also had to improvise some villages. As you can see here, it's a stationary version because the village was on a cliff, and all the kids ran out, but we still wanted to give them this feeling of moving the horse. So we would adapt it as we went on. And then sometimes we had 1 or 2 groupies that would follow us from village to village. And at one point they said, we can't come to the village. Can you come to our farm? So we started visiting farms. This was a farm of a man it was a family who was very, very poor. And his brother couldn't leave because he's milking the cows. So we went there, and his brother came out and was like, la cavala, che cosa? The cow, the horse, why? And I think for us, there was this moment in art making in this way for us, that if we can make something that immediately provokes someone to ask a question, that's then something working. Like, because he asks, why the horse, why? And then you can ask him back, why? Conversations started to happen. So from this visit, they invited us into their house and they explained like the economics of surviving as a farmer in this region, the history of the development of this region, the rate of suicide in this region because people don't have any money, so they commit suicide or they're ashamed of being farmers. So we made a documentary video of this. You can see it on our website. And the last day, we were quite tired. We said, okay, we're going to do one more day. People wanted us to keep going, but it was quite a lot of work to move this around. Everybody said, you must go to this festival because all the mayors will be there and we will all come together, all these villages and people we met, and we will celebrate. And so at this fair, nobody wanted the horse to end. So they said, yeah, how can we keep this conversation going? The horse has given us a way to talk. And so many people were talking about radio as a potential, that we could start to have radio conversations in the region and then maybe bring that conversation to the nation. So we proposed, maybe just to say that often our projects keep going, they evolve. And so this project started in 2010 and it's still going. And so from this, we proposed to make a radio station. And we often start with just drawing. And we proposed that on the farm that was hosting us, we would create a radio station as a treehouse. And we were thinking about Umberto Eco's The Baron in the Trees, or sorry, yeah, wait, is it Italo Calvino? Italo Calvino, The Baron in the Trees. Was this boy who kind of escapes his bourgeois life and lives in the trees, and we used that as kind of a imaginary beginning point. And then we sited a location in an old oak grove on the farm, and we brought arborists to come and talk with us to see if we could actually have like people in these trees. So for this first sketch was very important. And then we built this tree house kind of referencing the horse, because the horse was quite popular in the imaginary of the people. And this wood was taken from a storm that had happened the year before. And this region is really being hit hard by climate change. So there's a lot more rain and wind and floods and sliding. So we wanted to give life to these trees. These were 350-year oak trees that we used to build this. And maybe a story for you, because it's relevant, is, so when we were building this, I didn't put the pictures in. The tractor who came to put these posts in, the brakes didn't work, and the whole tractor fell into the treehouse, and the whole treehouse collapsed, and these were broken, these beams. And we were like, okay, we have to end the project. This is a bad sign. We stop. And then the neighbor said, you know, the storm last year also killed 3 of our oak trees, and they were the trees that Joseph Beuys planted. So this was in the same region where Joseph Beuys was spending a lot of time and growing grapes for the free school. And so we these posts are actually from trees that Joseph Beuys planted in the neighboring farm. So there's this sort of, it's not really like an obvious sign, but maybe it's nice for you. So the design of this is Lodov Rankin, who is Futurefarmers architect and philosopher. And he wanted to design the treehouse so that it mimicked some of what the farmers would say. So the farmers were often saying that this region is so unstable and we need to find stability in the instability. And so he made the form so that it's only stable when it's in its final form. But if you take one of the rings out, the whole thing collapses. So it's this kind of beautiful form that's quite stable when it's together, but precarious if not. And so this treehouse was being built, and then in parallel, I was working with a local radio production group called Radio Papase. And we went and we interviewed more farmers, and we created a kind of speculative radio show. It was based on real stories, but then we kind of would cast some of their stories into future and past scenarios. You never knew temporally where you were. And we called the radio show Radio Instabile. So we would go to different farms and we would offer to trade time to work for them in exchange for interviews. And this was a nice way to interact in their lives a bit more deeply. We carried with us this box. So all of our recording equipment was in this box. And then we also would ask each farmer for some of their seeds to collect and then share with the next farmer, but also to collect. They were all grain farmers that we were visiting, and they were all farmers who were growing seeds that were not certified. So in this particular moment in the EU, they were considered like illegal, all the seeds they were growing. So we wanted to bring them together in this constellation of the horse, because they had all encountered the horse, to kind of galvanize them as they said, if we can work together, we will protect each other. So this kind of brought them into connectivity. And then after we did all of these interviews, we invited everybody back to the farm and to open the treehouse as a space where we would host conversations in the future. So we invited people to kind of process down to the treehouse. We had a big feast. And then we invited everybody to the treehouse to listen to this radio show. But that's in the rural area of Italy. And so we wanted to bring this conversation to a bigger stage. And so Maxi, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Rome, was running a program, and they asked us to bring Radio Instabile to the museum for 1 week. So here we ran the show that we did in the mountains, but then we also invited cultural ministers, Minister of Agriculture, other people to interview farmers on a more national stage. So this was broadcast on the national radio station, Radio 1, and then we also worked with the pirate radio station so that it was getting to pirate radio stations around Rome. Okay, so I'm going to show one more project. All of our projects are very layered, so maybe there's some things I'm missing. So in 2010, we were invited to Oslo, mainly because of the Victory Gardens project again. Oslo was redesigning their waterfront, or actually, yeah, redesigning their waterfront. Previously, it was an empty port for 20 years, and before that, it was a place they used to build boats. But it was empty for 20 years, and the city decided they wanted to turn it into like the face of the city. So they were building the National Opera, the Munch Museum, the National Library, multinational banks, and then all of this area was housing and commons and schools. So it was really kind of bringing the city to the front. And they asked us to do a project here in one of the common areas. So there were 3 areas that they had defined as common zones. And we were, again, like, what do we do in Oslo? And this is a huge development project. Do we want to be involved in this? And so we actually formed a board to consult with, that were people that we thought were quite critical of this setting, to kind of see, like, test ourselves. Should we be part of this? So we worked with an artist, maybe you've heard of Kobe Mattes. He's a Belgian conceptual artist who works with copyright law and works a lot in kind of food activism. We worked with a colleague of David Harvey named Neil Smith, who works with gentrification in the United States, and then Hendrik Lubben, who works at Humboldt University in Berlin around gentrification and migration. And they all had various kind of ideas about how we should participate or not, but they all said you really should participate, because being in this conversation, you have a potential to change the development. It's still at an early stage, and Norway's quite open-minded. You should do it. So just to let you know, that's sort of how we dealt with this question of should we do something in this kind of environment. So another trick, we went again to see what happened here 100 years ago. So a little bit more than 100 years ago, the port was for boat building still. You could see the boats here. And the river was running here, and they would bring all the wood from the forest to the waterfront to then be used to build boats. And this was a farm here that was run by the king, and it was to grow food for the workers and also for the king's court. And so we thought, maybe it's interesting to have a farm in this new zone. There was one there before, and the city said, like, no way, nobody wants to farm. It's totally unattractive. This is like the new Oslo. But then we showed them this picture, and they were like, interesting. You know, politicians love cultural heritage. And they said, okay, yeah, you can try, but we still don't think anyone's going to farm. And so we, rather than being future farmers, to do this project, it was a permanent public art project, which we had 10 years to develop. We wanted to form a working group. So we formed Flatbread Society as a working group. And the reason we came up with this name is because in Norway, Norwegian nationals eat flatbread all the time. But also in Oslo, there's quite a huge immigrant population. And just near the site, there's like Pakistani restaurants, Iranian, Somalian, Indian, and they're also eating flatbread. And so we thought flatbread could kind of be this currency that would connect different cultures. And so Norway has a lot of pictures of flatbread in their cultural history. And somehow this caught on. People really loved the idea of flatbrød society, like they could relate to it. And so we started to think about, what if we made a farm in this waterfront and also had a bakehouse, which is a kind of very common space in rural Norway where people would collectively bake and mill their flour and store their bread, this flatbread, for sometimes 10 years. And it was really a social space. And people also kind of caught on to that, like, wow, a bakehouse in the city, that would be beautiful, absurd, but interesting. And so we were thinking, how do we create a space in this new development that is an ecology of different practices? So thinking through a multi-species perspective, like how can we all coexist in this strange new space that where no humans have actually like occupied in an urban way. They have worked there, but they have not lived there. And so we, at the beginning, again, we were just making drawings. And then we decided to create a temporary presence in 2013, which was trying to demonstrate what a permanent bakehouse could be like and what a farm could be like. So we said we'd like to put ourselves on the waterfront for 6 weeks and create an open workshop where people can come and help us build, and then we think together what a permanent space could be like. Here it is, like it was right on the waterfront, and we partnered with a bread oven builder to build an oven that could facilitate different types of bread making to kind of bring different cultures together. So there was a tandoor oven, raised bread pizza oven, and then a take oven, which is a flatbread oven, and then a seat which was heated by the ovens. And so this was open 24 hours a day, so anyone could use it and anyone could imagine what to do there. And if you wanted to do a specific program, we had funding for you to apply to do workshops. So this was sort of the fixed temporary site. And then we created a mobile oven, this canoe oven, that would go out to different neighborhoods and bake and talk to people about this site that we were imagining as a future farm and bakehouse. And so we would just kind of go to different neighborhoods, set up the oven, bake, and interview people and talk to people. And we made all of these conversations accessible online. So this is Marta van Dessel, who we work with quite often from Antwerp. She was recording people and she put her microphone in this piece of bread that was making people more comfortable in a way talking. And there's Loda again, and this is Stein Skiffelers, who is also part of the project as more like a media producer and conceptual partner. And so people came to the bakehouse, all kinds of people. sometimes expected, sometimes unexpected. Immigrant teens started to come and bake there because they immediately knew how to use the tandoor oven. The road authorities came and had their afternoon snacks there. They were, the workers of this new development. This was a group of climate scientists who came after a university conference. This was a group of anti-GMO activists. So in this year, there was, the EU was trying to make it illegal to grow uncertified seeds. And there was a demonstration in Oslo, and they asked if they could end the demonstration at the bakehouse and make bread and soup and talk. And from this particular meeting, we told them about our idea to have a farm. And they said, yes, we must do this, and we should grow uncertified seeds because this is the true commons. And so we galvanized on this day, and we, with all the demonstrators, we planted a section of the field that's close to the bakehouse. And we planted all seeds that were ancient grains that had been lost kind of in the 1800s. They didn't go through the industrialization process, so they're quite different than domestic grains. And we planted a demonstration field. And on this day, like, the media came, and it was quite celebrated, and it really gave our project a lot of credibility. And the city took it seriously and said, okay, how do you imagine a real farm? Let's do it. Once we started planting things there, stuff started to happen. Like this farmer came by and he said, you're going to need to plow the field. I have a horse. I'll come plow the field for you. A group of beekeepers came, and they're still there, and they kind of evolved as artists now. They're called Oslo Apiary. This is Marius and Mikael. And the place was quite open, like, in a way, the beekeepers just kind of occupied the space. They started beekeeping, and now they have bird houses and heritage fruit. And our role Future Farmers became more like this annual insurgence of a cultural aspect. So we wanted it to be an urban farm, yes, but we also wanted there to be a cultural element to it. And so we would every year do a kind of festival with a thematic, and they always had a poster. We also had a website that was kind of keeping track of all the events. And then at the end of this temporary session, when the city said you have the license to do something permanent, we brought all the people who did programs over that 6 weeks together, and we ran a workshop to co-imagine this future farm. And so we brought together people who use the space, and then some experts who were like working around alternative economies, some architects, some cultural heritage people, some lawyers around common law, to really think, how do we make this a true commons? And we actually asked people to bake their ideas. So we baked them in the ovens, and then we asked them to place their ideas on a continuum between open and closed. So we were asking, like, should this place be open 24 hours, accessible to everyone? Or should it be completely closed, one key holder? Place your idea somewhere on this line, and then we discuss it. So we were trying to establish from this the form of the bakehouse, the form of the farm, and then the function. So how will it function economically, socially, environmentally? And this was quite generative. And the city said, okay, again, we take you seriously, let's go. But our problem was we had not enough soil on this site. So we wrote 56 postcards to farmers, and 52 responded in 2015. And we asked them all to bring a bit of soil to the site as a symbolic action, but it was a lot of soil, to lay a foundation in the city that was dedicated to also the farmers who are growing food for the city. So to celebrate and support all of the peri-urban farmers. So we had a procession where we met at the edge of the city. People brought wheelbarrows of soil. The king brought 9 tons of soil. Other people brought just a basket of soil. And we walked to the site, and we made this large flatbread out of canvas. And we asked everybody to put 1 handful of soil before we laid it on the land. to mix together all these different cultures into a new culture. And on this day, to collectively write the intention of this site, which people decided it should be a site dedicated to agriculture and art, but that it should be a cultural institution as on the same level as the National Opera, the National Library, and the National Museum that was also coming to the waterfront. So this was written, and we invited this new culture to be the witness, the soil, and dedicated this site to this new culture. And it was named on this day Lo Setter, which means a common in the city. And in Norwegian, it really resonates. People, a satra is something that's usually up in the mountains. It's a commons where there's a lot of folklore around the satra, but it's really somewhere you go elsewhere. And so to have it in the city, it really resonated with people. So, it's 10 years of work I'm showing in 20 minutes here, but this is the space a couple of years ago. So it's now this multi-use farm. There's allotment gardens that are like individual plots, and then there's a community farm that's actually a community of communities. All these little plots are run by different people. It's all self-organized. This is a permanent bakehouse, which I'll show in a second. And the idea was that we wanted to take some of the art money and provide a full-time job for a farmer. So we partnered with the Norwegian Farmers Union, and now there is every 2 years, there's a new farmer hired. So these are sort of the sequence of our farmers so far. And now there's a job opening if anybody wants to be a farmer in Norway. December 22nd is the new deadline for a farmer. And we built this permanent bakehouse, which was a different design than the first one. And this was based after an 1895 sailboat that still goes and moves around the harbor, which was a rescue boat designed by Colin Archer, who was this famous boat builder. And the 1895 was this period in time where a lot of the seeds were growing, fell out of production. And then a group of Norwegian farmers found old seeds in various places and got them back into production. So there's a reason we chose this boat and this time period. So we worked with local boat builders to build this. And on one side is an open meeting space, and on the other side are the ovens. And on the roof is a heated ceiling and seating, and a little garden here where people grow all kinds of different things, mainly to put on the bread. And so now this project goes on. It really has a life of its own. And I think the key question when you do these long-term projects is, how do you leave as artists? Like, okay, every time we came back, it was like, oh, Future Farmers is here. And there was sort of a different energy when we were there. And how do you kind of not be depended upon to have the momentum? And so we slowly had to, the last 2 years, really let other people curate and take a slower back door. But we proposed to leave on a sailing voyage. So we actually got access to one of the boats that we fashioned the bakehouse after. So this is one of 10 rescue boats. This is a boat called Christiania, which is the old name of Oslo. And we took our first year harvest on a reverse migration back to the Middle East. So it was quite an ambitious project, but our commissioner went for it and really said, this is fantastic. It's such a beautiful way to create a feedback loop of the commons that we're growing here, and to tell the stories of where they came from. So this was a 1.5 year journey where we went to different farms. We went to Denmark, we went to England, we went to Wales, we went to Belgium, France, Spain, and we would trade seeds and collect seed stories. And this work is exhibited still to this day in different locations. And we consider that the seed journey still goes on, even though we're not sailing anymore, through the exhibitions. So I look at time, and I think I'm going to stop. And if we have questions, I have some little other side projects I can share, but I stop there for a moment.
Hello.
Hello.
But you can hear me, right? Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I have a lot of questions. It was really great. We would do a 15-minute break now. There's a bar, have some drinks, and you can just stay in the Zoom, and hopefully a lot of people will join online. And yeah, it's now. So let's mean 10 past 8. Again.
Okay. I see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah.